Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Good morning and welcome. This is the Wednesday, May 8th, 2024 meeting of the Independent Taxpayer Oversight Committee, or ITAC. Welcome to everyone. Before we get started this morning, I just want to ask our interpreter to walk through how to access interpretation services for today's meeting.
Yes, good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use
Seems like we're having some technical difficulties hearing our interpreter. Maybe, I don't know if...
Could you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you again. Thank you.
I'll start again. Announcement from the interpreter. To use interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, donde está el globo terráqueo, y seleccione español. Si está utilizando la aplicación de móvil de Zoom desde su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, at this time, I want to ask our clerk to verify we have a quorum today.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum this morning.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Okay, just want to quickly talk about how this meeting will work. This morning, we will take in-person public comments followed by virtual public comments. If you are a member of the public here in the room, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk at the appropriate time. And if you're joining us via Zoom, please raise your virtual hand and you will be called on at the appropriate time. Both in-person and virtual public comment are permitted as a part of today's meeting. I will now ask SANDAG's financial analyst, Vanessa Leon, to provide a quick reminder on how the public and member comment will work today. Vanessa.
Thank you, Chair Franco. We will take both in-person and virtual public comments as noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda. In addition to emailing comments, the public may also provide live comments during today's meeting. In order to provide live comments, you can join today's Zoom meeting through the link or by dialing one of the numbers from your phone that are provided on the cover page of today's meeting agenda. Join the meeting by clicking on the Join Webinar link provided in the confirmation email you'll receive upon registering. When public comments are called for an item, on the Zoom platform, click on the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar. The chair will call on you by the number you provided. If you're participating by phone, press *9. The chair will call on you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. The instructions for providing live comments are also on the bottom of cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the homepage of SANDAG's website at www.sandag.org. All comments, whether emailed or live, will be made a part of today's meeting record. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vanessa, okay, at this time, we'll move on to item 1, which is our public comments, communications and member comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. I see no hands from the, oh, I'm sorry. We do have one member of the public, the original draw. You can go ahead.
Yes, you know, it's just kind of sad to see that we can have a whistleblower be fired for exposing fraud, waste, and abuse and corruption going on within SANDAG, and the very people who have been engaged in that. I mean, Hassan has left, but we still have Andre, and he should be fired because somebody who is, you know, brought this forward was fired, and that's totally inappropriate when it was doing what needed to be done in order to, you know, fix the problems, expose the problems. And instead we have, you know, Andre, who's gonna retire and still collect money in the process until he does that. And then after he leaves, he'll get money. And he's engaged in the problems that have occurred. And it's just a little bit, nerving to know that SANDAG is still allowing this to take place, and that the upper management is even, complicit in it. And so how can people have trust in SANDAG when that takes place? I mean, if you're continuing, he's continuing to be the chief financial officer dealing with the money in the budget. And so it's like, how is that leave people with trust when the very people who were engaged in hiding what was going on and firing somebody who was trying to do the right thing and got retaliated against, and now there's a lawsuit for it? It's like, are you wanting to have more lawsuits because you're allowing this man to continue to, do business and maybe possibly try and hide different things that are going on? Because it's a good way to do that. If you're still there, you can sit there and try and cover up even more fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption that you've been engaged in. So, it would behoove SANDAG to fire Andre immediately and not wait any longer.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any member comments this time? No, seeing none, I'll just make one announcement. As you can see, it's a little bit lonelier up here today for me because my vice chair, Pedro Orso Delgado, has announced he is resigning from the board because his brother has now been appointed CEO of SANDAG. So I know that I believe he'll be starting in June. The new executive director will be starting in June. So we wish Pedro the best, and we're going to miss him. Just wanted to make that announcement. And now I think we're going to hear an agency report from Susan this morning. Susan, good morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Frankel. First, I would like to say Happy Bike Month. Our teams are gearing up for Bike Anywhere Day, which is happening on May the 16th. We invite all of you to join us. Feel free to sign up at sandag.org/Bike Month. As you just mentioned, the board of directors has appointed a new CEO for SANDAG, Mario Orso. He'll be joining the agency on June the 17th. He is currently the chief deputy director for Caltrans District 11. Our CEO, Colleen Clementson, recently traveled to Washington, D.C. with the San Diego Chamber of Commerce to participate in national discussions to advance regional priorities like Otay Mesa East, Port of Entry, and the Lausanne Rail realignment projects. And as we heard at our last meeting on the update for Otay Mesa East, the team has completed and submitted the 30% design plans to the federal government for their review. They did that on April the 19th. And this includes plans for the Port of Entry and the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Facility. We'll be starting the Lausanne Rail realignment environmental process this spring and recently began our 5th phase of stabilization efforts on the bluffs. And this is a critical milestone to relocating the tracks off the bluff by 2035. Regarding the regional plan, we recently submitted the technology methodology to CARB for the plan. This is our first deliverable to CARB and explains how SANDAG will quantify the GHG emissions in the 2025 plan. On the airport transit connection progress is being made, and we are gearing up to conduct a travel survey this summer. We also plan to hold a regional public engagement session and will bring additional project updates as work progresses. We are also underway with a public survey on the San Ysidro Mobility Hub. The public input will help inform improvements we can make over the next 5 to 10 years, like better ADA access, a safer station layout redesign, and sidewalk and curb widenings. And lastly, just last week, the FHWA and FTA were here to conduct their federal certification review for SANDAG and announced that SANDAG will be recertified. Those are my updates.
Thank you so much, Susan. Any questions or comments on the agency report today? I have one question, Susan, and it's related to CARB's involvement in the development of the regional plan. Is that a state mandate that SANDAG coordinate with CARB on those methodologies, or does SANDAG just elect to do that?
I'm not sure. I would imagine that more communication that we have with CARB throughout the process is beneficial to the outcome. I'm not sure if it's a mandate or not, but I can get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes item 1 today. We'll move on to our consent agenda. There's one item requiring approval, and that is item number 2. Do I have, well, first, let's see if there are any public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The original draw, you can go ahead. You are self-muted at the moment. Oh. I actually don't think we have any public comments on this item. It looks like that hand went down. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Do we have any questions or revisions to the consent calendar today? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. Rivera.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Rivera and a second by Ms. Alquist. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. For Biology Environmental, Lorraine Alquist. Approve. CEO Private Sector is absent today. Contractor Construction is also absent. For Finance Budgeting, Miriam Babaki.
Yes.
For Licensed Civil Traffic Engineer, Frank Rivera.
Yes.
Licensed Engineer is absent. And for Real Estate Right-of-Way Acquisition, Chair Frankel.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously with those members present.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move on to our report agenda today, and we'll begin with item number 6. This item is the City of San Diego TransNet Program and Transportation Capital Improvement Program update. We have a number of members of staff of the City of San Diego. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, committee. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Chris Gascon, the Assistant Director of the City of San Diego Transportation Department. With me today, I have Patrick Auk, Program Manager of the Department of our Finance section of the Transportation Department, as well as Louise Shar, Assistant Director, Engineering Capital Projects Department, and Karen McGriff with the Engineering Capital Projects Department. We're here to provide you today the City of San Diego TransNet update and to highlight how the funds are being utilized throughout the city. The presentation today will provide an update on the city's TransNet program. We want to start with the status of the current TransNet funds, which includes FY24 cash flows, estimates, and current fund balance held at SANDAG. We'll then move back and look back at FY23 key accomplishments, which includes a look at submittal disbursements, requests, and TransNet fund projects that completed construction in FY23. After that, we'll look at the current fiscal year's TransNet budget and estimated expenditures. And we'll also look ahead to FY25's proposed TransNet budget and point out some budget highlights.
Good morning, committee. This slide shows a snapshot of the current fiscal year's cash flow estimate, as well as the prior 6 fiscal years' actuals. At the beginning of fiscal year 2024, the city's fund balance held at SANDAG was $41 million. The city is projecting to request about $50.7 million in total disbursements from SANDAG by June 30th of 2024. That is almost 124% of the total current fiscal year's revenue. Due to the pandemic, the city experienced an overall slowdown in capital spending, which resulted in decreasing disbursement requests between 2020 and 2022. In fiscal year 2023, capital spending increased again, which led to an increase in disbursement requests by 32% compared to fiscal year 2022. For fiscal year 2024, we are projecting another capital spending increase of 10% compared to fiscal year 23. With this forecast, the city is projecting a fund balance of $36.3 million at the end of this fiscal year, which would result in a fund balance decrease of 11% compared to last year's ending fund balance. The City of San Diego is one of 19 jurisdictions that receives a portion of the total TransNet revenue each year. The city's TransNet allocation is about 40% of the total net annual revenue of the local street and road formula funds. The graph on this slide shows how efficiently each jurisdiction spends their TransNet allocation by comparing the current fiscal year's revenue to the cash balance amount held at SANDAG. As reference, a value of 100% indicates a fund balance amount equal to the current fiscal year's revenue amount. As of December 31st, 2023, the city had the fourth lowest fund balance at approximately 125% of the current fiscal year's revenue allocation. It is also important to note that the city's fund balance amount held at SANDAG has been fully programmed and budgeted to active projects. This slide is looking back to fiscal year 2023 and highlights some key accomplishments. Out of the actual TransNet revenue of 47.9 million, the city requested disbursements in an amount of 46.1 million, or 96% of the total revenue. In addition, the city completed construction of 29 TransNet-funded projects. The next slides will look at these accomplishments in a little more detail.
Our top TransNet spender was Project SD 176, which includes Surrey's Slow program, as well as transportation's maintenance and efforts across all asset types. This project accounted for 44% of the total FY23 disbursement. The second largest spender was Project SD 188, related to traffic engineering and project implementation, with $3.3 million, or 7% of the total disbursement. Followed by SD 250, the La Media Road improvements, which was valued at 3.1 million, or 6.7% of the disbursement. Followed by SD 16A, traffic signals, with 2.6 million, or 6% of the disbursement. Looking back at some of the key accomplishments in FY23, we have 3 examples here from a total of 29 TransNet funded projects that were completed during fiscal year FY23. The projects are sorted by total TransNet funded spent during the lifespan of the project. Street resurfacing Mission Bay, Project SD 96. This project resurfaced nearly 1.6 million square feet of roadway at Mission Bay, as well as installing new crosswalks, gutters, and curb ramps. This project spent a total of $5.4 million of TransNet funds since its inception in 2019. As you're aware, resurfacing is an important function to improve a street's condition, which in turn provides safer traveling for vehicles, bicyclists, and pedestrians. It also gives us an opportunity to evaluate the roadway for any minor changes in its use. The city invests nearly, or over $100 million annually in street maintenance throughout the city. This equates to over 1,200 miles over the last 6 years. And looking in another project here, it says the AG Street Storm Drain Replacement Project, Project SD 23. This project removed nearly 780 feet of corrugated metal pipes ranging in 18 and 30-inch diameter pipes, replacing it with 24-inch reinforced concrete pipe, repaired the associated sinkholes and roadways. This project spent $1.7 million of TransNet funding. The next project, Mission Village, Rhonda Road to Qualcomm. This project, Project SD09, constructed 88 upgrades and improvements to the pedestrian walkway on both sides of Mission Village Drive from Wanda Avenue to Qualcomm Stadium. This project spent nearly $1.2 million of TransNet since its inception in 2015.
For the current fiscal year, the total estimated TransNet revenue is 46 million. Following the 30%, 70% rule, 13.7 million is budgeted for maintenance activities and 31.8 million for congestion relief, with the majority of that funding in the capital improvements program, which makes up 27 million, or 59% of the total budgeted amount. TransNet is a major funding source in the Transportation Department CIP, as we can see on the next slide. This chart shows the different funding sources that support the department CIP program, grouped into 9 different funds groups. As of December 31st, 2023, TransNet makes up 75.2 million, or 15% of the total capital budget, in an amount of $506 million. That amount includes new fiscal year 24 programming in an amount of 27 million, as well as carryover budget from fiscal year 23 in an amount of 48.2 million. As mentioned on a previous slide, the city is projecting to spend a total of 50.7 million of TransNet funding this fiscal year, 31.4 million in capital projects and 19.3 million in non-capital and maintenance projects, as well as administration. Up to December 31st, 2023, TransNet expenditures totaled 19.2 million for both capital and non-capital projects. That is 38% of the total projected expenses. With only 2 months left, we're on track to reach this year's projections. It's worth to note that the city has already fully expended its project implementation budget, as well as 84% of the maintenance budget. Chris will go into a little more detail on how we're estimating to spend our capital budget.
The city currently has over 130 open and active CIP projects that are either fully or partially funded by TransNet. The following slides show, this slide shows the top 4 projects with the largest anticipated TransNet expenditures for fiscal year 2024. We're estimating to spend a total of about $7.1 million of TransNet funding on these 4 projects alone. This is 33% of the total projected TransNet CIP expenditures for FY24. I'd like to take a closer look at each of these 4 projects. The first project, the Sunset Cliffs Seawall Improvement Projects, will construct approximately 46,000 square feet of AC overlay on Sunset Cliffs Boulevard between Adair and Osprey Street, as well as a secant pile wall, a conventional retaining wall, handrails, pedestrian barricades, curb ramps, signage, striping, and markings. This project is currently in design and anticipates to go into construction in February of 2029. This fiscal year, the project anticipates to encumber $2.7 million of TransNet funding. The second project, the La Media Road Improvement Project, widens La Media Road between SR 95 to Semper Via Road to a 6-lane primary arterial from SR 95 to Airway Road, a 5-lane major between Airway Road and Semper Viva Road, with 3 southbound lanes and 2 northbound lanes. It'll also improve drainage at the intersection of La Media and Airway Road. The project started construction in February of 2023 and is anticipated to finish construction, substantial completion, by December. This fiscal year, the project anticipates to spend $2.2 million of TransNet funding. The Otay Mesa truck route constructed an additional lane to existing Otay truck route from La Media to Drucker Lane. This project finished construction in January of 2023 and is anticipated to close out in November of 2024. Currently, the project is in a 25-month revegetation period, and the project management team has been working on preparing the as-built and notice of completion, plus working on relocating some of the site lighting for the private property owners along the truck route, which is still under work and will be awarded as a JOC contract. This fiscal year, the project anticipates to spend $1.1 million of TransNet funding. And lastly, the El Cajon Boulevard Hawks project installs 3 new pedestrian hybrid beacons, Hawks at the intersection of El Cajon Boulevard and Altadena Avenue, 50th and 58th Street. The project started construction in July of 2023, anticipates to finish construction by the summer of 2024. This fiscal year, the project anticipates to spend $1.1 million of TransNet funding.
Looking ahead to the next year, the fiscal year 2025 proposed TransNet budget for the city of San Diego is currently estimated to be $47.1 million per SANDAG's latest revenue forecast. 14 million or 30% of the total budget allocation will support street division's maintenance operations. 32.6 million or 70% of the total allocation will support congestion relief activities, including 25.2 million for capital projects, 5.5 million to support non-capital project implementation activities, and 1.9 million for non-capital bicycle facilities and traffic signal improvements. Approximately $500,000 will support the administration of the TransNet program. Some of the fiscal year 25 TransNet budget highlights are 16.1 million for the street resurfacing program, which is one of the city's highest priorities next year. 7.7 million for traffic signals, which includes new traffic signals, modifications to existing traffic signals, as well as non-capital traffic signal projects. 5.5 million for traffic engineering project implementation, 1.8 million for bicycle facilities, both capital and non-capital projects, 0.8 million for new sidewalks, 0.3 million for median installations, 0.2 million for streetlights, and 0.2 million for traffic calming measures. The funding is allocated based upon estimated expenditure needs for each project during the upcoming fiscal year and takes project status, phase, priority, and equity factors into account.
In closing, the city has implemented several process improvements to maximize the efficient use of TransNet funding, and our goal is to further improve the management of our TransNet funds wherever possible. Timely allocation of TransNet funding to the projects that are ready to spend, maximizing TransNet funding by prioritizing TransNet funds over other local funding sources whenever possible. There is extensive cross-coordination between all stakeholder departments to evaluate when projects are needing funding. This has significantly reduced instances which funding has been underutilized for projects or projects are delayed for lack of funding. With that, that closes our presentation.
Thank you so much. A really excellent presentation. We appreciate all of you being here. We know you're extremely busy. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have any public comments.
Okay, we'll bring it back to committee members for questions, comments for staff or the City of San Diego.
Just curious, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much. Very thorough. But I'm just, in your presentation, you discuss capital and non-capital. How do you distinguish, even though it's in my world, sometimes they look like capital, maybe it's the city's definition of what's capital and non-capital. How do you define and distinguish the two?
So each asset type has a certain threshold, and if that threshold is met, it goes into the capital category.
What is the threshold?
It depends for each asset type. So and we can gladly give an example.
Is it like a financial threshold or is it
asset types are like bridges, street resurfacing, and Karen was already ready to give some additional information.
There are a couple of different criteria that we consider. First of all, capital versus operational is more of an accounting definition, where if we are extending useful life or items will be in use for longer than a full fiscal year, they're considered capital. Most of our infrastructure, if it has not reached its intended useful life, so if we have a street light, for example, that is supposed to last for 25 years and we have to go out and replace it at year 15, that is considered maintenance, as opposed to if there was previously not a street light or a traffic signal and we are installing we are expanding the services, expanding the capacity, those things are considered capital. When we're dealing with things like bike lanes, which have kind of an incremental impact, they are, unless we're talking about the class of bike lanes that are separated, that are completely separate when we're dealing with sharrows, those types of things, because they are going on existing infrastructure, i.e. our pavement, our streets, our asphalt, those we use a financial dollar limit threshold to determine when it's capital. If we are doing above $50,000 worth of striping in a single area, we would consider that a substantial change to our infrastructure availability and consider it capital. If it's any less than that, it's more of an incremental maintenance type of improvement. If that makes sense.
Complex enough, but but does that affect how you categorize them under maintenance or actual congestion relief or non-maintenance?
It more impacts our financial statements and what we capitalize. And then because also one of our other major funding sources within the CIP program. I don't know if you noticed it, but the slice that's larger than TransNet is our financing. Financing, debt obligations, those things can only be used for capital improvements. You can't issue long-term debt to support operations. So that's another criteria that we're looking at because we do combine TransNet with a lot of other funding sources within the program.
Is that definition anywhere written in your policies, in the city's policies, and how those thresholds are established?
Again, because most of those thresholds are, yes, we do have capitalization thresholds, capitalization policies that are out there. They are in our financing documents. The straight definition of capital versus maintenance, that's a GFOA finance kind of definition that we rely on. And then how we apply that definition is written into our financial policies, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I have a couple. First is to staff, and regarding TransNet cash balances, can you remind us, the ordinance have any targets, requirements for expenditure of cash balances?
And have Marcus answer that. He's on his way up.
Mr. Pasquale to the rescue as always.
Yeah, so we have a couple tools to monitor the cash balances. Part of that is on attachment 7 of the TransNet quarterly report. We have that 70% cumulative spent. It's not a requirement, but it is a monitoring tool. So if you recall, we had the city of Carlsbad who was under the 45% expenditure cumulatively. And so we had them come in and explain what their plans were in the future. Another tool is on the actual fiscal audits, not necessarily testing expenditures to date, but to make sure they're not holding on to cash on their side. So that's a 30% fund balance limitation. So if they're over 30% compared to their annual revenues, that does result in a finding. And so those are the two main tools we use in monitoring the cash balance.
Thank you, Marcus. And so it's interesting, the graph that was provided as part of the presentation on page 4, San Diego is one of only a handful of jurisdictions that has a balance below 200, a cash balance below 200%. And so given the monitoring, I mean, some of them, at 600%, San Diego relative to their peers, peer jurisdictions do very well. But Marcus, in the event that there's a large cash balance, 70% you said was kind of the threshold if that we want them to spend that money. What tools does SANDAG have to encourage them to require expenditure of fund balances, if any tools?
Aside from them coming in and understanding what their plans are in the future, we also have programming in the RTIP. So that's also part of attachment 7. We can see how much is programmed, and that helps us anticipate, how much they're going to spend in the near future. I will point out on the slide, looks like page, this slide, that it kind of skews the numbers relative to our attachment 7 on the quarterly report, because it kind of doesn't take into account debt issuances. So for example, San Marcos is at 660%, but on attachment 7, they are 80.1% cumulative expenditures. And that makes sense because if they have unpaid debt, that kind of increases their cash balance relative to their annual allocations. And it also gives them more capacity to spend down. So that kind of adds a disagreement between our attachment and this graph.
Thank you, Marcus. I think that's a really important point, is that where there may be a larger cash balance, a lot of those balances are committed either through long-term financing, it's either part of debt, or in the city of San Diego's case, they've committed to projects all of the cash balance. So it's not like, for members of the public that may be viewing this, it's not like they've got 50, 60, $70 million sitting in an account just hanging out there uncommitted. They're not planning on what to do for the future. It seems like based on Marcus, your attachment, that all of these, all of our jurisdictions have committed those cash balances to future projects.
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you, Marcus. And then curious, we have so many, to get this many managers from the city of San Diego at a meeting is very difficult to do. So I'm curious, as a policy matter, we often discuss the 70-30 rule in terms of maintenance and congestion relief. I'd be curious, any one of you, all of you, whoever wants to take it, your thoughts on that requirement. Does that hamstring you in any way that you think is helpful, is not helpful? If that requirement weren't in place, how do you think that would impact your operations at the city of San Diego?
Well, we would definitely, I know there have been conversations and negotiations to eliminate the 30-70% split. It would definitely give us more flexibility on allocating the funding where we can spend it. We have, year over year, we have been spending our maintenance budget allocation completely, and we would definitely have no issues if we were able to spend more in the maintenance, which would also eliminate the impact on our general fund, or if we had more flexibility on where to budget the TransNet funding.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions. Thank you, folks, for coming in. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7 this morning, and that is the Specialized Transportation Grant Program, Cycle 13 Call for Projects. This is our discussion of the selection criteria. I think this item will be presented by Zach Rivera.
All right, wonderful. Good morning, Chair, and thank you for having me. My name is Zachary Rivera, as you just mentioned, and I serve as the Program Manager of the Specialized Transportation Grant Program, or SDGP, which includes the TransNet Senior Mini Grant Program, or SMG. As you may recall, I presented to you at your January 2024 meeting where I provided an overview of the call for projects process. I also sought your input on the criteria we should use to help determine which projects and programs should receive funding. So having taken many of your recommendations to heart, I am returning to you today with proposed criteria for the SDGP Cycle 13 call for projects. But first, let me provide a quick refresher on the Senior Mini Grant Program, for which the ITALC has purview. The program is based on Section 4C2 of the TransNet Ordinance, where eligible applicants are local nonprofit organizations and public agencies. Eligible grant types are operating and mobility management. Additionally, the program's target population is older adults, defined as age 60 and over. To be eligible, senior mini grants also must be within San Diego County, and the program overall is to improve mobility for older adults in our region. So about every 2 years, SANDAG holds a call for projects to distribute available SDGP funding. For this 13th cycle, SANDAG estimates that about $2.8 million in senior mini grant funding will be available. SANDAG sets selection criteria to help determine how this funding should be allocated to various projects and programs. The proposed selection criteria were informed by benchmarking research on how other regions administer similar programs, a review of the fiscal year 2024 TransNet Triennial Performance audit, which I know all of you are very familiar with, the staff experience and expertise, as well as stakeholder feedback, including from the iTalk. A key component of the criteria development process was indeed stakeholder engagement. Following your January meeting, I presented to the Transportation Committee and shared your feedback with that committee. Staff then hosted a stakeholder workshop in February to focus on the evaluation criteria and gather input. And then starting in late February and continuing through the end of March, we engaged various working groups and stakeholder groups, such as the SANDAG Mobility Working Group, the SANDAG Social Services Transportation Advisory Council, the SANDAG Social Equity Working Group, the Age Well San Diego Transportation Team, and the San Diego County Volunteer Drivers Coalition. This engagement, the second part of this engagement, was really focused on the selection criteria. Finally, throughout the development process, we also received input via social media, email, and a comment form that was available on the SEGP webpage. Through these efforts, we received well over 100 comments from more than 100 participants. Affordability for passengers, reliability of service, service quality, and efficiency emerged as the dominant themes throughout the stakeholder engagement process. During the stakeholder workshop, we presented the Cycle 12 evaluation criteria. We then asked stakeholders to indicate how important each criteria category was to them on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 representing least importance and 5 representing most importance. This slide shows their feedback in which they rated operational/implementation plan and need and equity as the most important criteria. This slide shows the proposed changes to the evaluation criteria categories we used last cycle. As mentioned earlier, the proposed criteria were informed in part from your feedback. Specifically, page 57 of your agenda packet shows the feedback you provided at your January 2024 meeting and the proposed changes to the evaluation criteria that were made partly due to that feedback. One of the proposed changes as shown on this slide is to increase the possible points for the performance monitoring and outcomes criteria category from 10 to 15. Consistent with this proposed change, staff suggests that we reinstate the past performance adjustment criterion to really emphasize the importance of past performance as part of the selection of new projects and programs. The proposed changes are discussed in attachment 1 and detailed in attachment 2, starting on page 59 of your agenda packet. And just I'm including this slide for context. So last cycle, the SANDAG board awarded about 2.75 million in senior mini grant funding to 4 grants of the 11 that were submitted. Of the 4 that were awarded, 2 applicants received about 72% of available senior mini grant funding. The map on this slide shows the service areas of the 4 awarded grants. The darker green shading represents overlapping service areas, which shows a concentration of service in central San Diego. However, 2 of the grants were countywide. Since 2010, the Specialized Transportation Grant Program has set minimum and maximum grant award thresholds to ensure that SANDAG administrative costs for the program were reasonable and that limited funds were distributed to a variety of services. Currently, the maximum amount of senior mini grant funding an applicant can receive each cycle is 1.2 million. However, based on the results from last cycle, as well as stakeholder feedback to encourage a broader distribution of funding, we propose to reduce the amount of senior mini grant funding an applicant can receive to 1 million. In response to stakeholder feedback, we also propose to reinstate the allowability of indirect costs for the senior mini grant program starting with the Cycle 13 call for projects. Staff presented possible indirect cost guidelines at your April 10th, 2024 meeting based on feedback provided during that meeting, as well as subsequent discussions with an ITALK subcommittee. We suggest two options that senior mini grant grantees could choose from. One, a federally negotiated indirect cost rate, or two, the de minimis rate allowed by 2 CFR 200, the federal grants guidance. These options align with the federal guidelines, which would streamline SANDAG administration and allow senior mini grant grantees, many of whom are nonprofit organizations, to recoup a portion of their indirect costs. So in terms of next steps, we plan to present the SDGP Cycle 13 call for projects to the Transportation Committee at its May 17th, 2024 meeting, and can share any feedback you have today. Depending on the outcome of that meeting, we anticipate presenting the Cycle 13 call to the SANDAG board in May or June 2024. And then pending board approval, we would release the Cycle 13 call on July 1st, 2024, which would then open a 90-day application window. And then from there, submitted applications are reviewed for eligibility, eligible applications are evaluated, and funding recommendations are developed. This phase of the process is expected to be from October 2024 through January 2025. We then plan to return to you in February or March 2025 with funding recommendations for the Senior Mini Grant Program once the process concludes. And then pending board approval in early 2025, awarded Senior Mini Grants could begin July 1st, 2025. And the grant term for operating and mobility management grants through the Senior Mini Grant Program is about 2 years. So in closing, I want to thank you for your feedback and engagement during the development of the call. While there's no requested action on this item, staff can share any feedback you have with the Transportation Committee and board. Additionally, we encourage all eligible agencies to apply. So if there are agencies you think we should contact, please reach out. We'd be happy to follow up with them so they can be informed of the call. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair for any questions or comments. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rivera. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. We do not have any public comments.
Okay, we'll bring it back to committee members for questions, comments, discussion. Yes, Lorraine.
Maybe just as a follow-up, when you do your outreach in the community kind of questionnaires, or is that something that you are plan to consistently follow up with, or was that a snapshot in time in order to evaluate the success of the current program? Just of interest.
Yeah, so it's usually ongoing. It's heavily weighted during the development of the call process. And there were multiple. There was the workshop, there was different presentations to working groups, there were different methods. That's also spelled out in our procedures. So we have all of our procedures online on the SDGP webpage, and it's included in there. And then the other thing I'll mention is every 4 to 5 years, we have what we call a coordinated plan, and that includes more robust stakeholder engagement. And that plan is needed to feed into the regional plan, and also projects that are eligible through this program have to be derived from the coordinated plan. So there's definitely consistency between the program, the coordinated plan, and then the regional plan.
And so as the regional plan develops and evolves, then there's a component that's also condensed and filtered in with the feedback that you've been provided.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Zach, just a couple of questions. Firstly, thank you for incorporating so much of the feedback into the evaluation criteria categories. I think it really reflects the discussion that we had, and many people had personal experiences with transportation, specifically relative to seniors. I imagine I'm thinking about the past performance adjustment. To what extent do we see new grantees apply, my sense is that generally, I mean, it's specialized, it's in the name of the program. These are highly specialized services, and there's a relatively limited number of nonprofits or other organizations that provide these sort of services. So do we see the same grantees typically every cycle, or do we get new folks entering the mix?
We get new folks in the mix. However, the vast majority are repeat grantees and applicants.
So you don't, you don't have concerns that a past performance adjustment perhaps would disadvantage a new grantee, someone that had no past performance, right? That had no previous track record with SANDAG.
Yeah, so we were discussing that internally as well. I will say that the range is -15 to 5. So trying to balance what would be fair to incumbent grantees or applicants versus new applicants. I think the range is commensurate with so that there would be not really any difference between incumbent applicants and, new applicants.
Yeah, it does seem that it was thoughtful in that, the -15, you're thinking about really trying to disincentivize poor performance, but on the positive side of just 5, that likely is not going to disadvantage, anybody that did want to apply for the program and receive funds. And then just one question about this is the evaluation criteria details included on, I guess it's page 66 of our packet. I don't know what it is of your staff report, but criteria number 2 is need and equity. And 2A is the percentage of those served by the proposed service that are members of the target population. When we say, capital T, capital P, target population, what does that mean in this context? Is that just seniors, or are there other criteria that we're looking at in terms of our target populations?
Yes. So it's for this program, it would be older adults 60 and over. So if that is met, and so say if an applicant said we're going to serve 100% older adults 60 and over, then they would get the full 5 points.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions. I know we had a possible action on this, although I think that if we're comfortable with the scoring criteria, I don't think we need to take an action on this. I'll ask staff.
I have a question before we finish up.
Yes, ma'am.
It just occurred to me, and I just couldn't tell from all of this selection criteria. A lot of our community, San Diego, is becoming quite diverse, and a lot of the services that are provided these days, they have a multilingual or translator capacity to make sure that all communities are served. Is that something that is considered when selecting? Somebody calls for specialized transportation if they don't speak English well. Are there translation abilities to in the ones that are selected?
Yeah, so it sort of gets to that on some of the criteria, but it's not specific to that. What I will say is that there's a lot of different providers that have varying degrees of interpretation services. We don't have a requirement at SANDAG that the programs provide interpreting. There are a lot of the agencies are small and don't have the capacity. That said, something that we're exploring is for SANDAG to help meet the gap and provide kind of complement the interpretation services that are existing.
I highly recommend that.
Thank you. I think that concludes this item. Thank you so much, Mr. Rivera, for your presentation. We really appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to item number 8 today, which is the 2023 RTIP Amendment number 11. And this item will be presented by Richard Radcliffe.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ITALK members. Item 8 is Amendment 11 to the 2023 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP. On May 24th, the Board of Directors is scheduled to approve Amendment 11. Amendment 11 is an annual formal RTIP amendment that is being processed to accommodate the Regional Transit Capital Improvement Program. And this amendment reflects the programming of federal fiscal year 2025 FTA funds, which the transit agencies will be applying for in the next couple of months. Attachment 1 is the summary of changes report, and it shows the prior and revised project cost, the cost difference, and the percent change for each project. The table has been sorted in descending order by the absolute value of the change in dollars. And as requested by the ITALK, we have included a column showing the changes to TransNet for each project, as well as a table showing the breakdown by TransNet fund type. In attachment 2, you will find more detail on the changes in this amendment, and it's specifically for the projects funded with TransNet. Each project table will show TransNet funding at the top, followed by any other funding programmed on the project. Some key changes in this amendment include the programming of Senate Bill 125 funding awards for both the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, or TIRCP, and the Zero Emission Transit Capital Program, or ZETCP. And that's on several NCTD and SANDAG projects, including NCTD 34 for Transit Service Operating Support, NCTD 05 for Bus Revenue Vehicle Purchases and Related Equipment, and SAN 30 and SAN 30A, which are both projects for the San Dieguito Lagoon Double Track. And those are part of group listing SAN 114, as it's shown on the change summary. And finally, attachment 3 summarizes the TransNet eligibility requirements analysis for Amendment 11. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Radcliffe. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments on this item?
We have no public comments, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll bring it back to committee members for questions or comments for Mr. Radcliffe. I have a couple of questions, Richard. So obviously we have, this kind of net increase of 64.2 million in TransNet dollars programmed. The majority of that, it looks like about 58.5 or so, is for NCTD for their transit service operating support. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so obviously we didn't get a net, increase in TransNet funds overall. These are being reallocated. So do we have other sources of funding that are coming in, and kind of where are we taking this money from in other TransNet projects, or kind of maybe you could walk through where that's displayed on the attachment?
So looking at the attachment 2, each project will show the prior, like a snapshot of the prior version of each project in the lower portion of each table. And then above it shows the current status of the project. And looking at, what was programmed previously, you can kind of ascertain what was changed and what shifted around. Typically, the transit agencies will move their TransNet around between their projects or between fiscal years. And then this primarily focuses on them programming their FTA funding awards for the upcoming year.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments? It's a smaller amendment this time, Richard, than we typically see. Normally we have, 30 pages of tables here. This is
not all the local TransNet projects this time.
Yeah, it's not all the LSI related stuff. So good. Okay, well, seeing no other comments, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Richard, and that concludes our report agenda today. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 12th. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.